Welcome back to Conversations about Bookbinding, right here from Bookforge, and that's in Erie, Pennsylvania. And today, we're going deep, deep into a topic.
Yes.
Ancient papyrus scrolls.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Edward Patrick Krantz, that's our honey badger binder.
Of course, yes.
He put together
He's amazing.
a whole stack of material
He is.
for this deep dive.
I can't wait to see what he found.
I know, and let me tell you, it's not just about paper.
Right?
This is a plant, right?
Yes.
That was basically the engine of writing.
It was.
For like 3,000 years.
3,000 years.
And this plant actually went extinct in Egypt for a while.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, can you believe that?
It really is
Yeah.
a fascinating history of papyrus. But for the ancient Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans,
Yeah, for sure.
this wasn't just, something to write on. It
Right.
was like their internet, their library,
They're everything.
everything.
Their life.
It was.
Okay, so let's get back to the basics for a second.
Okay.
We're talking about the Cyprus papyrus plant.
We are.
Is that right?
Yes.
What was so special about this plant?
Well, first off,
Yeah.
picture the Nile Delta wetlands.
Okay.
That's where this tall, reedy plant thrived. It wasn't just Egypt, mind you. It grew in other places.
Right.
But they really perfected it there.
They did.
I always think of it like champagne. You can make sparkling wine anywhere,
Yeah.
but champagne only comes from that specific region.
Right.
Egypt was the Champagne region for papyrus.
Oh, okay. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. So they had the plant in the perfect place.
The perfect place.
But how did they actually
So how did they actually
turn it into something?
make it into
like-
something you could write on? It's a fascinating process, actually.
Yeah.
You start with the inner pith of the papyrus stalk,
Okay.
and you slice it into these really thin strips.
Okay.
And then you layer the strips, and you soak them, and you beat them.
Oh, wow.
And all this releases the plant's natural sap,
Okay.
which acts as a glue
Oh, wow.
to bind it all together.
It's like papyrus phyllo dough.
You got it.
That's cool.
Layering and pressing.
Yeah.
And what you end up with is this surprisingly durable sheet.
Okay.
And it has two distinct sides.
Oh, really?
You have the smooth recto side. That was the preferred writing surface.
Okay.
And then the rougher verso side.
Okay.
That was usually used for drafts and things like that.
So they would actually write on both sides.
Sometimes, yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay.
It's amazing.
So they had the sheets.
Yeah.
But then how did they take all those sheets and turn them into...
How did they make those scrolls?
Yeah.
They were very careful about it, that's for sure.
Okay.
The sheets were meticulously joined end to end, again with more plant-based glue.
Okay.
And they would form these long, continuous scrolls.
Oh, wow.
Some scrolls, like the ones containing Homer's works, could be up to 40 meters long. 40 meters. They had a standard format, too,
Oh, right.
with vertical columns
Right.
and margins.
It was like very
thought
organized.
great.
Yeah, it was like an ancient book.
It was like unrolling a scroll longer than a bowling lane.
Yeah.
Mind-boggling.
It's crazy. So I've heard that not all papyrus was created equal.
No, absolutely not.
Is that true?
It's like comparing printer paper to, fine
How can it-
stationery.
Okay.
Pliny the Elder, he was a Roman scholar.
Okay.
He actually documented
Oh, wow.
at least 8 different grades of papyrus,
Really?
each with their own specific use and price point.
So there was like
Like a luxury papyrus market.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
That's so cool. Tell me more about these grades.
Okay, so the top tier grades, things like Augustan
Mm.
and Livian,
Okay.
and these were named after Roman emperors.
Oh, wow.
These were reserved for important works like literary works
Okay.
or official documents. You wouldn't want to waste that on a shopping list.
Okay.
Imagine if your printer paper had like an imperial seal of approval.
I love it. I can
Oh.
totally picture someone in ancient Rome
I can see it.
walking into a papyrus shop and saying, "Give
Mm,
me the good stuff."
Finest Augustan papyrus you've got? I'm writing an epic poem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And just like today, there were also, more affordable options.
Okay.
Lower grade papyri for, everyday stuff.
So we've got our sheets, we've got our scrolls, but what about the tools?
The tools.
They used to write on them. Did they have like ancient fountain pens or something?
Not quite fountain pens, but they had special tools.
Yeah, okay.
The most common one was a sharpened reed,
Okay.
but they also used metal pens
Oh, wow.
made from copper, bronze, or iron.
Wow. Can you imagine the patience it took to
Ah.
create those letters?
Those ancient scribes.
It's incredible.
That's skill.
Yeah, I bet they had some serious calluses.
I bet they did.
And what about inks?
The inks?
Did they have color options back then? They were very sophisticated with their inks.
Okay.
While black was common, of course it was made from soot or lampblack.
Right.
But they also had inks in red and green and blue and even gold.
What?
Oh, yeah.
Wow, so it wasn't just about, like, practicality, but also aesthetics.
Absolutely.
They really cared about how it looked.
They did. These papyrus scrolls were often stored in jars
Oh.
or special boxes to protect them,
Yeah.
and some of them were decorated with illustrations and designs.
Wow. So they really were like works of art.
They were valued not just for the information, but for their beauty
Yeah.
and craftsmanship.
I love it. So this is all really fascinating, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've got the plant itself.
Yes.
We got the sheets, we've got the scrolls, we've got the tools, the inks.
Mm-hmm.
What did people actually use these papyrus scrolls for?
Good question.
Was it just for, like, you know,
Important
documents?
documents.
Like really fancy literature?
Literature.
Or did they use them for everyday stuff?
They played a vital role in every aspect of ancient society. I mean,
Oh,
for over 3,000 years, this was their main way of communication and record keeping.
it's incredible.
Everything. Religious texts,
Wow.
government records, literature, poetry, even personal letters.
It's like papyrus was like the ancient equivalent of paper and email and like social media all in one.
That's a great way to put it.
Crazy.
Yeah. So
But you said that owning scrolls was often a luxury.
it was.
So who actually got to use these things?
Because of the cost and the labor, personal ownership was mostly for the wealthy.
Right.
Or institutions like libraries and archives. Imagine if only the very rich could afford paper today.
That would be wild.
Right.
Yeah, that would be a different world. So
It makes you think about the libraries and archives and how important they were.
Yeah.
They had the job of preserving these scrolls.
Yeah, they really.
To pass knowledge down through the generations.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
So we've established that papyrus scrolls were essential for like preserving and transmitting knowledge in the ancient world.
Yes.
But how did we go from those long scrolls to like the books we have today?
That is a great question.
Was there like a moment?
It leads us to
Or did it just kind
a
of
turning point.
evolve over time?
The rise of the codex.
Okay, what's a codex?
Imagine a stack of papyrus sheets,
Okay.
but bound together on one side.
Oh, okay.
A format much closer to the books we know today.
So it's like the ancestor of the modern book.
Yes.
Okay.
The stepping stone between scrolls and the books we're used to.
Okay, so what made it so much better than a scroll?
Well, a lot of things.
Okay.
But we'll tell you all about those after the break. Welcome back to Conversations about Bookbinding. Before we go too far into the codex, we were talking about the scrolls being like works of art. You know, we talked about those grades and the inks and the storage. It sounds like they, really took pride in the craftsmanship.
Yeah, they really did. Yeah. Some of those surviving scrolls.
Oh, yeah.
They're so ornate.
They are, with colors and the calligraphy and just
it's really
beautiful illustrations.
It's like woven into the text.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's clear that they saw these scrolls as
it wasn't
just something to write on.
Utilitarian object. It was expression.
Yeah, and that makes me wonder if they're so beautiful.
Yeah.
And they're so valuable, how did that change like people's relationship to reading and writing, do you think?
That's such a good question. I mean, we forget, right?
Yeah.
That for them, seeing written text was a deal, a rare thing. It was precious.
Probably.
Unrolling a scroll, feeling the papyrus, seeing the ink shimmer.
It must have been amazing.
It must be.
It really makes our reading on screen seem like kind of sterile and boring.
Yeah. There's definitely something about touching a real object.
Yeah.
Engaging with it. But speaking of different ways to interact with text.
Yes.
Let's get back to the codex.
Yes, the codex. So you said it was better than a scroll.
It had some advantages, yeah.
What were they?
Well, okay, imagine you're a scholar.
Okay.
And you're trying to work with a 40-meter-long scroll.
Okay.
Lots of unrolling, lots of re-rolling.
Yeah, to find what you need.
The codex, with its bound pages, much easier to navigate. Just flip to the page you want.
It's like the difference between scrolling through a really long web page.
Exactly.
And using the table of contents in a book.
Yeah.
To just go where you need to be.
Exactly. And it was easier to carry around.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Imagine trying to, like, travel
Try to travel with a giant scroll.
With a 40-meter scroll.
A codex, though.
Yeah.
Could fit in a bag, easy. It was like the ancient paperback.
Okay, so that portability must, like, revolutionize things, like, in terms of sharing information.
I would think so, yeah.
The spread of education.
It's a fascinating area, and it's hard to say for sure, but I think it's possible that the codex, being easy to use and carry around, that it helped spread knowledge.
For sure. You also said it was better for illustrations.
Yes.
Was that just like a space thing, or was there more to it?
Well, space, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, with scroll, you're limited. You got to put those illustrations in the text, right?
Right.
But the codex, you've got pages.
Yeah.
You can do full pages, diagrams,
maps,
anything.
It's really changing, like, the way we communicate.
Absolutely.
Visual storytelling.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's a revolutionary development.
A big shift, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's easy to look at it and be like, oh, cool, technology.
Right.
But there's so much more to it than that, right?
Oh, there's so much more to it.
Like social implications.
Social and cultural.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, the codex,
Yeah.
it made it easier to copy texts and to send them out.
Right.
Which meant that knowledge could spread faster and wider. It also changed the kinds of writing that people were doing.
Okay.
New genres.
Okay, like what?
Like technical manuals, textbooks, things like that. They relied on illustrations, diagrams.
So it wasn't just like a new binding.
Yeah.
It was like a way to evolve
Like,
education.
and how we share information.
Yeah. Wow. So how did that transition happen? Was it like, boom, codex?
No, it was gradual.
Or was it like a slow...
Very gradual. They coexisted for centuries.
Really?
Scrolls were still used, especially for religious and legal things.
Okay.
But the codex just won people over, you know?
It makes sense. It's so practical.
Practical and versatile.
Yeah, it was bound to happen. Were there any groups like who just like refused? They were like, no, we're sticking with the scrolls.
I'm sure some people preferred the scrolls.
Yeah.
Maybe for tradition or aesthetics.
Yeah.
Ritual.
Yeah.
But it's hard to argue against the codex.
Yeah, for sure. So the codex won, ultimately.
Yeah, it did.
But we can't forget about the papyrus scrolls, right?
Absolutely not. Like that.
They were the foundation
Yeah.
for everything we have today.
Thousands of years.
Human ingenuity,
Creativity.
knowledge.
The pursuit of knowledge.
And they really give us a physical connection to the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, holding a papyrus scroll and like knowing someone made this by hand
By hand. Yeah.
hundreds of years ago, it's amazing.
It's humbling, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It reminds us that, like, you know, the written word can really connect us to the past.
Yeah.
So it's been so cool to, like, dig into the world of papyrus scrolls with you. We talked about, like, the plant making the scrolls, the tools, the inks.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, like, one of the coolest things is, like, looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
How this ancient technology shaped art, culture.
How it changed how we think about books.
Yeah, exactly.
It's incredible what humans can do.
It really is.
When they put their minds to it.
Yeah, and how fascinated we are
Oh,
with words.
With a written word.
Yeah, and before we, wrap up completely, I think we need to talk about the people who made all this happen.
Uh-huh.
The scribes.
The scribes, yes, the backbone of it all.
Yeah.
They weren't just copyists, they were trained professionals.
So they were more than just, like, human photocopiers.
Oh, much more. Skilled in language, writing systems, mathematics even.
Wow, what kind of training did they have to go through?
It was rigorous, started young.
Real?
Years of work. Imagine mastering hieroglyphs or cuneiform. Learning grammar, syntax, perfecting your calligraphy.
Like an ancient apprenticeship.
Exactly. And only a select few could do it.
So what kind of jobs did they do? Was it all, like, religious texts, government documents, or was there, like, more specialized stuff?
There were different kinds of scribes. You had temple scribes, responsible for the sacred texts.
Yeah.
Legal scribes, for contracts, court proceedings.
Wow.
And then the royal scribes.
The royal scribes, okay.
They wrote about the kings and pharaohs.
So they were like the ancient historians, biographers.
Exactly. And don't forget about the commerce scribes, keeping track of all the trade. They were the accountants.
It's really amazing how much they shaped the ancient world behind the scenes, working away. It makes me wonder, like, did they have any influence on what they were writing?
That's a good question,
Mm-hmm.
and one that scholars are still discussing.
Okay.
While some of them might have just copied word for word,
Yeah.
others, maybe they had a bit more freedom
Okay.
to interpret, maybe even edit the material. Think of a scribe working on a science text.
Yeah.
Maybe they add their own observations, their own ideas.
So they're not just preserving knowledge.
No.
They're adding to it.
Wait,
It's part of history.
They are, which is why it's so interesting to look at the relationship between scribes and texts.
Okay, last question about scribes.
Yeah.
What was, like, their social standing?
Mm.
Were they respected? Were they just seen as, like, servants?
It really depended on when and where and what they were doing.
Okay.
But overall, they were skilled professionals.
Oh.
They had authority, influence. To be able to read and write, that was valuable.
Yeah, for sure.
They held power.
Yeah, makes sense. They were the gatekeepers of knowledge.
Yes.
They were the bridge between, like, the written word
Right.
and the people who couldn't read it.
Exactly.
That's a powerful position to be in.
It is. And it reminds us that bookbinding,
Yeah.
it's not just about, the stuff,
The materials.
the techniques. It's about the people.
Yeah.
The people who made it possible, who dedicated their lives to passing knowledge down.
It's really cool that we took the time to talk about the scribes.
It is.
I feel like it's given me, like, a whole new appreciation
Yeah.
for the papyrus scrolls and the people who made them.
I agree. It's been a fascinating look at the papyrus scrolls.
It has.
And I hope you all
Yes.
look at books and bookbinding
Yeah.
in a new way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And a big thank you to Edward Patrick Krantz,
Yes.
our honey badger binder
The honey badger.
of Bookforge,
Yes.
for,
Yeah.
putting this together for us.
He did a great job.
He did. It's just a great reminder that, like, a love of books and bookbinding,
Yeah.
it's timeless.
Timeless.
It goes beyond technology. It's always there.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for joining us
Mm.
on Conversations about Bookbinding. We hope you'll tune in next time
Yes.
for another deep dive
Into the world of books.
into the world of books.
Welcome back to Conversations about Bookbinding. We've been on this incredible journey with papyrus scrolls, from the plant itself all the way to the codex. But we can't wrap up without talking about the people who made it all happen, the scribes.
The scribes, those guys were essential, the backbone of literacy in the ancient world.
Totally. And we were talking about how they weren't just copyists.
Oh, no, they were so much more.
Yeah, like highly trained professionals.
They had to be. Think about it, skilled in language, writing system.
Right. It was a whole thing.
Even mathematics sometimes.
Wow. Okay, so what kind of training did they have to go through to become a scribe?
It was intense. It started young, too. I mean, years of dedicated study. Imagine having to master hieroglyphs.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Or cuneiform.
Yeah.
Learning grammar, syntax, perfecting their calligraphy.
It sounds like an ancient apprenticeship, really.
It really was. And not everyone could do it. It was a select few.
So once they finished all that training, what kind of jobs did they do?
Well, there are a lot of different paths. You had your temple scribes, of course.
Right, for the sacred texts.
Exactly. Then you had legal scribes, documenting contracts, court proceedings, all that.
Wow, so important.
Oh, absolutely. And then there were the royal scribes.
Ooh, the royal scribes.
Yeah, those are the guys who chronicled the lives of kings and pharaohs.
So basically they were the ancient historians and biographers.
Precisely. Oh, and we can't forget about the commerce scribes.
Oh, right.
They were keeping track of all the trade, the accounts. They were the ancient accountants.
It's amazing to think about how these scribes, often working behind the scenes, really shaped the ancient world.
They did. They really did.
And it makes you wonder, did they have any say in what they were writing? Or were they just taking orders, copying word for word?
That's a question that scholars are still debating today.
Really?
Yeah, it's not so clear-cut. Some scribes, maybe they were restricted to copying verbatim.
Okay, yeah.
But others, who knows? Maybe they had more leeway to interpret, maybe even edit the material.
That's interesting.
Right. Imagine a scribe working on a scientific text. Maybe they add in their own observations, their own thoughts.
They're not just preserving knowledge, they're adding to it.
Exactly. It makes you think about how dynamic that relationship between scribe and text really was.
It really does.
You...
Okay, last question about the scribes.
Sure.
What kind of social status did they have? Were they respected, or were they seen more like servants?
Well, that varied a lot depending on the time, the place, and the specific job they did.
Okay.
But generally speaking, they were seen as highly skilled professionals.
Makes sense.
Yeah, they often held positions of authority and influence.
Right, because being able to read and write, that was a big deal back then.
Absolutely. Literacy was a valuable thing, and scribes, they had it. They held a certain kind of power.
They were like the keepers of knowledge, right? The bridge between the written word and everyone else.
Exactly, a powerful position to be in. And it reminds us that the history of bookbinding, it's not just about the materials, the techniques. It's about the people who made books possible, who dedicated their lives to sharing knowledge.
It's been fascinating to talk about the scribes. It really gives you a deeper appreciation for the papyrus scrolls and the people behind them.
I agree. It's been an incredible journey exploring papyrus scrolls.
It really has.
And I hope everyone listening will see books and the history of bookbinding in a whole new light.
Me too. And of course, a huge thank you to Edward Patrick Krantz, the Honey Badger binder of Bookforge, for curating this amazing deep dive. It's a great reminder that the love of books, the love of bookbinding, it transcends time, it transcends technology.
It really does. Thanks for joining us on Conversations about Bookbinding. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of books and the art of bookbinding.